Welcome back. Tonight we're going to explore one of the oldest truths in Greek mythology, that vengeance when served by an immortal is a dish that never grows cold. The question isn't whether Hera, queen of Olympus, would take revenge. The question is how long she was willing to wait and how far she would reach across the fabric of fate itself to settle every score. This is the story of Hera's long revenge. Close your eyes and let yourself drift backward through time, back to an age when the world was younger and the line between earth and sky was thin as morning mist. We begin on Mount Olympus, that eternal peak that rises above all mortal kingdoms, where marble halls gleam in perpetual sunlight and the air itself tastes of ambrosia. Here, in the highest throne room ever built, sits Hera, golden sandals on her feet, a crown of stars woven through her dark hair, eyes that have watched civilizations rise and crumble like sand castles before the tide. But Olympus is not our only setting tonight. We will travel to the wild forests of Arcadia, where oak trees grow so thick that noon becomes twilight beneath their branches. We will visit the 7 hills of Thebes, where dust rises from roads worn smooth by merchant caravans and the bleating of sheep echoes against ancient walls. We will stand on the windswept cliffs of the Aegean, where salt spray stings the skin and seabirds cry their lonely songs to an indifferent sky. All these places and more fell under Hera's watchful gaze. All of them became stages for her carefully orchestrated retribution. Let me speak to you now in her voice so you might understand what it means to be a goddess wronged. I am Hera, daughter of Cronus and Rhea, wife to Zeus the Thunderer, queen of heaven and protector of marriage itself. I did not ask for the role of the betrayed wife, yet it was thrust upon me as surely as my crown. My husband's infidelities are sung by poets, celebrated even as if his wandering eye were merely the price of divinity. But I am divine too. I am patient, I am thorough, and I forget nothing. Each slight, each mortal woman he pursued, each child born of his faithlessness became a thread in my tapestry. I did not act from simple jealousy, though mortals love to name it so. I acted to preserve the natural order. I am marriage. When my marriage is mocked, all marriages are threatened. When I am dishonored, civilization itself begins to fray. The inciting event, if we can call it that, happened not once but 1,000 times. Each of Zeus's affairs was a fresh wound, a new disturbance in the cosmic order. But let us focus on one woman, one child, one revenge that would echo through the ages. Her name was Alcmene, a mortal woman of Thebes, celebrated for her virtue and beauty in equal measure. Zeus desired her, as he desired so many, and being Zeus, he took what he wanted. He came to her in disguise, wearing the face of her own husband, Amphitryon, returned early from war. She welcomed him into her bed, believing him to be the man she loved. From that deception, a child was conceived. I learned of it as I always did. The whispers of nymphs reached my ears. The stars themselves gossiped about Zeus's latest conquest. And in my chest, that familiar mixture of fury and cold calculation began to burn. This child, this half-mortal son of my husband, would be extraordinary. Already the fates were spinning a destiny of heroism around him. Already Zeus was boasting that a child born of his bloodline would become the greatest hero Greece had ever known. He was talking about this unborn infant as if it were already a king among men. I made my choice then, as I always did, if I could not punish Zeus directly. For who can truly punish the king of gods? Then I would ensure his mortal loves and their offspring paid the price of his arrogance. I went to my daughter Eileithyia, goddess of childbirth, and I gave her instructions. When Alcmene's time came, Eileithyia was to delay the birth. Sit outside the door, I told her, with your legs crossed and your fingers interlaced. Let no child emerge from that womb until I say otherwise. For 7 days and 7 nights Alcmene labored. Her screams echoed through the halls of her home in Thebes. Midwives wrung their hands, helpless. Amphitryon prayed to every god he could name. Not knowing one of them was the very cause of his wife's suffering. The child inside her struggled for life, trapped between worlds, unable to be born. Finally, through a clever trick, a servant girl named Galanthus managed to fool Eileithia, crying out that the baby had been born. In her surprise, Eileithia uncrossed her legs and broke her spell. The child emerged at last, red-faced and wailing with the fury of a creature who had fought for his very existence. They named him Heracles, and I hated him from his first breath. But my revenge was only beginning. When Heracles was 8 months old, sleeping peacefully in his cradle beside his twin brother Iphicles, I sent 2 serpents into the nursery. Massive creatures, scales gleaming blue-black in the moonlight that filtered through the window. Their bodies were thick as a grown man's arm, their fangs dripping with venom that could stop a heart in seconds. They slithered across the floor, silent as nightmares, and rose up beside the cradle where both babies slept. What I did not anticipate, what even I in my divine foresight could not fully predict, was the strength already present in that infant's body. Iphicles woke and began to scream, a normal child's terror. But Heracles woke and reached out with chubby baby hands and grasped each serpent by the throat. The household rushed in to find him laughing, gurgling with delight, squeezing the life from creatures that could have killed a dozen men. The snakes writhed and coiled, but they could not break free. By the time Amphitryon burst through the door, sword drawn, both serpents lay dead on the nursery floor, and Heracles was reaching for them again, wanting to play. That was when I knew. This revenge would not be quick. This child was going to live, was going to grow strong, was going to become everything Zeus had promised. So I adjusted my approach. I would let him live. I would let him become a hero. And then I would make that heroism the instrument of his torture. As Heracles grew, I watched from Olympus. I watched him train with the greatest warriors of Greece. I watched him fall in love with a princess named Megara. I watched him build a life, a family, 3 beautiful sons who called him father and climbed on his massive shoulders. I watched him find happiness. And when that happiness was complete, when his joy was so perfect it seemed nothing could shatter it, I struck. I sent madness. Not subtle doubt or creeping anxiety, but violent, reality-shattering insanity. I wrapped it around his mind like a shroud, and in his madness he saw monsters where his children stood. He saw enemies where his beloved wife smiled at him. The greatest warrior in Greece, the man who had strangled serpents in his cradle, turned his strength against those he loved most. When the madness finally lifted like morning fog burning away, Heracles found himself standing in a home painted with blood, surrounded by the bodies of his wife and children, slain by his own hands. The sound he made then, they say, was heard across all of Thebes. Not a scream, not a cry, but something deeper. The sound of a man's soul breaking. He wanted to die. He tried to die, but I would not allow even that mercy. Death would have been an escape, and I was not offering escapes. I was offering revenge, measured and precise. The oracle at Delphi gave him the path forward, speaking with my voice, though she did not know it. He must serve King Eurystheus of Tiryns, a petty, cowardly man who had been born slightly before Heracles and thus claimed a birthright that might have been the hero's. He must perform whatever labors Eurystheus demanded. 12 labors, the oracle said. 12 acts of penance, and perhaps the stain on his soul might be washed clean. But Eurystheus was my pawn, and I whispered in his ear. Send him to fetch the Nemean lion, I suggested, a beast whose hide cannot be pierced by any weapon. Send him to battle the 9-headed Hydra, whose very breath is poison and whose heads multiply when severed. Send him to capture the Erymanthian boar, to clean the Augean stables, to drive away the Stymphalian birds with their beaks of bronze and their flesh-eating hunger. Each task designed to be impossible. Each task intended to end him. And yet he survived. More than survived, he excelled. Every monster I placed in his path became another story of his glory. Every impossible task became another legend. The lion that could not be killed he strangled with his bare hands and wore its pelt as armor. The Hydra with its regenerating heads he defeated with fire and cleverness, cauterizing each neck as the heads fell. The boar, the birds, the stables, one after another he conquered them all. I raised the difficulty. Fetch the Cretan bull. Steal the mares of Diomedes. Take the girdle from Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Herd the cattle of Geryon from the edge of the world. And still he persevered. Still he grew stronger, more famous, more beloved by mortals who saw in him the possibility of overcoming any obstacle. For the final labor, I crafted what I believed would be his end. Descend into the underworld, I had Eurystheus command. Go to the realm of Hades and bring back Cerberus, the three-headed hound who guards the gates of death. No mortal returns from that dark kingdom. No living soul walks back from those shadowed halls. Heracles descended, and to my fury, to my absolute rage, he returned. He had wrestled Cerberus into submission, brought the beast to the surface world, shown it to Eurystheus, and then gently, respectfully, returned it to its post. Even the gods of death themselves had been impressed by his courage and his honor. The 12 labors were complete, but I was not finished. I could not be finished, for to stop would be to admit defeat, and I am Hera, queen of Olympus. I do not accept defeat. I continued my campaign through the years of his life. When he took a new wife, Deianira, I arranged for her to receive a garment soaked in what she believed was a love potion but was actually the burning poison of the Hydra. She gave it to Heracles in innocent love, wanting to keep his affection, and it seared his flesh from his bones. The agony was so great that he built his own funeral pyre and begged to be burned alive rather than endure another moment of that pain. And there, on Mount Oda, as the flames rose around the greatest hero Greece had ever known, something unexpected happened. Zeus intervened, not to save his son's mortal life that was already forfeit, but to preserve his spirit. As the fire consumed Heracles' mortal flesh, his divine essence, the part of him that was Zeus's son, ascended. Through the smoke and heat, his form rose toward Olympus itself. I watched this ascension with mixed feelings, emotions I had not anticipated. He arrived on Olympus not as a broken suppliant, but as a hero who had endured everything I had thrown at him and emerged, if not unscathed, then at least undefeated. The other gods welcomed him. They celebrated his arrival. And Zeus looked at me with an expression that asked a simple question: is it enough? Has your revenge been satisfied? For the first time in decades, in the long stretch of years since Alcmene had first dared to bear my husband's child, I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness. I am not certain I am capable of true forgiveness, but perhaps something like respect. This mortal had suffered more than any other, had endured trials that would have shattered lesser beings, had lost everything and continued forward anyway. There was something almost divine in that persistence, something that transcended his mortal birth. I made a choice then, the last choice in this long saga of revenge. I approached Heracles on Olympus, before all the assembled gods, and I offered him my daughter, Hebe, goddess of youth, whose beauty and grace were unmatched even among immortals. The marriage was my way of saying what I could not speak aloud. You have proven yourself. You have paid the price. You are worthy of a place here. Did this undo the pain I had caused? Did it restore his first wife, his murdered children, the years of suffering and madness and impossible trials? Of course not. Revenge does not work that way. Revenge is not an equation that balances neatly. It is a story that echoes forward through time, shaping every soul it touches. Heracles became a god of strength, of perseverance, of the human capacity to endure. My revenge, intended to destroy him, instead forged him into something unbreakable. The trials I designed to be his ending became his immortality. Every time a mortal faces an impossible task and chooses to attempt it anyway, they invoke Heracles. Every time someone finds the strength to continue after devastating loss, his spirit moves in them. And what of me? I remained Hera, queen of Olympus, protector of marriage, she who does not forget a slight. But I also became the goddess who showed, through her long campaign against Heracles, that even revenge serves a purpose in the cosmos. That suffering, when endured with courage, can transform a person. That the obstacles we place in each other's paths sometimes become the very things that define greatness. I tell you this story not to justify what I did, but to illustrate what I am. I am the consequence of betrayal. I am the price of infidelity. I am the long memory of the wronged. And yes, I am also the one who finally, eventually, recognized worth when it proved itself beyond any doubt. The world was changed by my revenge. The myths that grew from it became lessons that mortals still tell. Be faithful or face consequences. Persevere, and even gods must acknowledge you. Nothing is simple, not love, not hate, not revenge, not redemption. We are all, gods and mortals alike, locked in stories larger than ourselves, playing out patterns that began before time had a name. So that is the story of Hera's revenge, or at least one chapter of it. For I took revenge on many, many others. Echo, who dared distract me with her chatter while Zeus pursued nymphs, I cursed to only repeat the words of others. Io, another of Zeus's loves, I transformed into a cow and sent a gadfly to torment across the entire world. Leto, pregnant with Zeus's children, I forbade to give birth on any land under the sun, forcing her to wander until she found a floating island that met my exact conditions. Callisto, Semele, Lamia, the list goes on. Each name a story. Each story a lesson in what it means to cross the Queen of Heaven. But tonight we focused on the longest revenge, the one that spanned a hero's entire life and ended not in destruction but in unexpected apotheoses. Perhaps that is the real lesson. That revenge, even when perfectly executed, does not always yield the results we anticipate. That the people we try to break sometimes become the strongest of all. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight, exploring the myths that shaped the ancient world and still whisper truths in our modern age. Next time, we will journey to a different story, perhaps to the shores of Colchis where Jason sought the golden fleece, or to the palace of Knossos where the Minotaur waited in its labyrinth. Wherever we go, know that I will be here, your guide through these eternal tales. If you found something meaningful in tonight's story, consider subscribing so we can continue these journeys together. But for now, rest well. Let the story settle in your mind like snow falling on ancient marble. Until next time, good night.